Welcome back to The Last Safe Space. This is a straight-talking, no-nonsense, data-driven podcast from Music Venue Trust. I'm your co-host, Toni Co, and today we're doing something a little bit differently. Instead of our usual Friday news roundups, I'm joined by a very special guest, the Chief Operating Officer at MVT, Beverley Whitrick. How are you doing, Bev?
I'm fine, thank you, Toni.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
So before we dive into discussing upcoming projects, I'd love for listeners to get to know you a little bit better. You're the Chief Operating Officer at Music Venue Trust, and while a lot of your work is behind the scenes, it's absolutely central to MVT's sustainability, its growth and its success. So perhaps you could just explain a little bit about what you do day to day and how you keep the charity moving forward.
I'm going to try. I always think COO is such a strange title. So when someone says, what do you do at Music Venue Trust? I always just say, I run the charity. So, yeah, it's all the stuff to do with scheduling, making sure that we know what we're doing when, but it's also a lot of the very much behind the scenes stuff to do with HR, making sure the team works, also talking with our trustees. We have currently 16 team members. We have 15 trustees. We also have consultants. We have lots of other people that need information and need meetings organising every so often. So I was thinking about this. I think I organise 4 full team meetings a year, 4 board meetings a year. And then we also have Scottish, Welsh and Northern Irish steering groups to make sure that we're keeping up with things around the nations. So those are every 6 weeks for each nation. So I feel like I do a lot of organising meetings.
You do.
As well as looking at the events that we do. And this year, because we haven't done Venues Day, our national networking event, we've actually organised 9 events around the country as well. So, yeah, that sort of logistics side of stuff keeps things quite busy.
Yeah, you're very strategy-based as well, aren't you? I think it's really important for people at home to hear what you do, because often the public sees the campaigns, it sees the headlines and the crisis interventions. But what they don't see is the work that helps, make all of this possible. And a lot of that comes down to you and all of the structures that you've built.
Thank you.
It does.
I feel like some of it's been really organic. I mean, there was a point at which MVT was basically me, because although Mark's the founder and the CEO, he was also doing quite a few other things. So yeah, in the early days, I sort of got to invent how we did some things. And obviously a lot of that has progressed a long way from when it was spreadsheets on my computer into proper systems and databases and structures. But yeah, I mean, I like organising things. So I do think it is quite a pivotal role, but the whole point of it is to make everybody else be able to do their jobs. And we're so lucky now we've got a bigger team. We can deliver so much more for the sector than we could before.
And how has the charity changed for you in the last 10 years?
I think there are 2 very definite eras of MVT. There's a sort of pre-pandemic bit where we were doing not very public-facing work. We were doing a lot that was for the venues. It was aimed at governments, local authorities, the culture sector. And we were kind of getting on and doing it and building a community. So it was really, really important, but it was quite, I was going to say behind closed doors, but yeah, not so public facing. And of course that changed entirely when COVID hit and we launched the Save Our Venues campaign, which is when you came on board and started working with us. And since then, things have changed radically. We had to appoint a much bigger team. We had to be working more directly with more venues, but also the whole kind of profile raising, talking much more in public rather than the odd conference and the odd interview, which we'd done previously. That's revolutionised the way we work and obviously enabled us to be so much more successful in terms of bringing change, but also raising money to work more directly with venues.
And thank you. Thinking about that success and sort of bringing people together, I'd like to talk about a few big events that we have coming up, starting with October 14th, where MVT is co-hosting the first ever Grassroots Networking Day. This is quite a big deal because it's quite a new event. I'm just wondering if you could explain a little bit about what it's all, why it's happening,
Sure.
Who it's happening for.
So we've organised in the past quite a lot of networking within other events that we've done. And what happened over the years is we realised that the sort of music industry networking element is so important, so fundamental, that it kind of deserved a day in its own right. So we talked with Arts Council England about whether we might get some money for a pilot project if we applied. And of course, you always have to go through the process. You can't just say, give us some money. But what we realised quite quickly was that if we worked in partnership with those other organisations who, like MVT, are really representative of key elements in the grassroots music sector, we'd have a really strong application. So we've worked together with the Association of Independent Festivals and the Association of Independent Promoters on developing a day that was about representatives from all of those sectors coming together and then networking with booking agents. So it's got a heavy emphasis on being the people who program festivals, who book gigs across the country, and promoters that come in and work within those contexts. And we fortunately, we did get some funding from Arts Council England's Supporting Grassroots Music Fund. We've also got some support from Creative Wales and from Belfast City Council to ensure that we can bring people from across the UK to London for a whole day of discussions and meetings about better programming in the grassroots sector.
I mean, that's really important for you as well, isn't it? Making sure that that funding is there to bring people from the other nations in, because so often that's a financial barrier for them, isn't it? It's so expensive, especially like from Ireland, I think, you know, to get the ferry or to fly over.
Completely. And all the events that MVT has ever put on, right from 2014, it's always been important for us to raise the money to offer travel bursaries, because that can be such a barrier to coming to something, and we try and make it as easy as possible. People need to give us their time, but what we always say is we'll make the event free or as low cost as possible. We'll feed you really well. We'll cover your travel. So what we're really asking for is your time to come and do something that we believe will be valuable to you. And yeah, we get so happy when people come from, you know, the Channel Islands or Northern Ireland. So the first person who ever arrived at our first venues day had come from Inverness. And I was so happy that that person had flown down to London for something that they didn't know whether it'd be useful or not, but they were taking that chance on us. And because it was useful, people have continued to do that over the last 10 years. And so this year, we've tried to do things around the country, but also always to offer travel bursaries so that that's not an inhibitor to taking part.
And while Venues Day is amazing and really important, and we'll come back to it later, this is not an event that's just about venues talking to venues. It's about building those wider connections across the whole sector.
Completely. And that's a real focus of what we're doing at the moment. It's kind of part of the same discussions as the levy. You know, we want the grassroots sector to be stronger. We talk all the time about ecosystem. And of course, there are lots of people who work in venues and on festivals, and promoters that book across both of those. And booking agents have got artists at the grassroots level that obviously they want as many opportunities to play as possible. So it just makes sense to bring people together so that the conversations can happen in one place rather than having to take place day after day after day in different contexts.
And I guess while we're talking about collaboration and other organisations, you know, grassroots live music has always been built on fairness. And today, actually it'll be tomorrow that this comes out, we're making that absolutely critically clear. Music Venue Trust and the Association of Independent Promoters have set out a new united benchmark. No pay to play, no merch cuts, and fairness at the core of every show. This is something that has been happening, you know, pretty much since I think MVT's inception. But we are sharing that publicly now, making it very clear that there's no exploitive measures is not the right word. There's no
practices.
Thank you. Practices happening any longer. This is being fronted by you, Bev. So maybe you could just explain about this new campaign that we've embarked on.
Yeah, I think there are some interesting sort of lingering concepts sometimes about the grassroots sector, and a bit like you've talked about already with Mark about reframing the concept of a grassroots music venue, you know, moving away from previous terminology. Sometimes the work we do is about taking something that is already functioning, but people aren't aware of it. And I think with both of these issues, there's been a lot of discussion about merch fees charged at gigs. but those tend to be much bigger gigs. They don't tend to be grassroots gigs, grassroots artists, grassroots venues. And so making a statement and doing a press release and an announcement about this is just reasserting that at grassroots level, Music Venues Alliance members do not take merch fees, because they know how important it is to the artists to sell merch at their gigs. So it would be entirely counterintuitive. So this isn't anyone saying, I've changed my ways, because they didn't need to. They weren't doing it anyway.
Yeah.
What it is an affirmation of the sector saying, we support artists selling their merch and taking the full money from their merch because we know that's important. And in the same way, pay-to-play is a dreadful practice that happened in the past, where conditions were put on performers that if they wanted to play, they had to sell X number of tickets. And basically they were given the work that's not the work of artists, it was the work of promoters or other people. But this hasn't been a thing within the grassroots sector in the UK for quite a long time now. So we just felt it was absolutely a good moment to be really clear about where we are, because we kind of divide into two sorts of stories, don't we? There's either the wonderful news about fundraising, you know, your Sam Fenders, your Coldplays, your great stories about money being raised, the advances with the levy, or it's terrible stories about venues closing. And of course, a lot of the other things are how the venue operates, the people, their values, what's important to them. And there was a growing feeling amongst our membership that it was important to state that nobody should think that these nefarious things happen in our venues, because they don't.
Well, I mean, that's all the work that we're doing at the moment behind the scenes is about empowering venues to talk about the ethical practices that they are already doing.
Yeah.
So it's not about making them do something that they aren't doing. It's about sharing.
You don't need to impose things on them. You know, they're a principled bunch at heart anyway. That's why they run venues that are so community focused. So, yeah, sometimes it's just about making the statement, and that's what this week's announcement is about.
Well, we hope that'll be a very, very clear statement for you at home, that those practices are not happening. They haven't been happening for a long time. And, you know, this is a commitment as well to make sure that it doesn't change in the future. Moving on to very, very exciting partnership. Very, very exciting. I'm so excited to say it. The V&A. So MVT is working with the V&A on their Lost Music Venues project, which is huge. It's huge because an institution like the V&A recognising grassroots music, it means something, doesn't it?
It means a lot. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the interesting things about Music Venue Trust is we're not a typical music industry organisation. And that's in several ways. One, we're a charity rather than a trade organisation. And two, we've always been what I think we consider, the team and the trustees, we've been a sort of music industry culture hybrid, in that we know that our grassroots music venues, of course, nurture talent that goes on to have an impact on the music industry, but they're cultural spaces. They're incredibly important resources. And when you get an esteemed cultural institution such as the Victoria and Albert Museum contact you and say, one, we're doing an exhibition that recognises these venues. And it's important to say, it's called Lost Music Venues, but it's not just mourning those that have closed. It will be broader than that. But it's a year-long exhibition at the V&A, and obviously being invited to be part of that, to be a partner in that exhibition, is huge for MVT, because it means that we as representatives of that sector are recognised as having a role to play.
Yeah, and I feel like we should just pause on that for a second and just really recognise that shift, because it's so massive to have an institution like that recognise grassroots music venues for the art that they're creating. They're sort of part of this bigger picture in the cultural fabric. You know, and when MVT started back in 2014, the conversation was about saving these spaces from immediate threat and keeping the doors open, tackling crises as they come in. But now we're here being invited into partnerships with one of the biggest cultural institutes in the world. How does that feel for you personally? I mean, that must be a really big deal. And what does it say about how far the whole network has come?
I mean, it makes me very proud. And personally, it's also one of those real celebratory things, because I come from a mixed art form cultural background. You know, I consider myself a cultural professional. So the opportunity to work with something like the V&A is amazing for me, because I just think it really is that sort of meeting of parts of the cultural sector that I don't think I thought originally that we would get there. And it's really like one of those things playing out where, yeah, we've arrived in a way in terms of cultural recognition. And it's also really exciting because it's going to be an exhibition in the V&A in South Kensington from next April that will be on for a year. So many people will see that.
It's so exciting. I feel really excited about it. I mean, I never thought this day would come. Having a background working in grassroots music venues, I never ever thought a space like the V&A would have this level of recognition for us. It's just incredible. Do you want to announce the annual report? You do it.
Okay. So the other thing that I would say is, one, really congratulate the team there for their view on culture as well, because they're so aware of like what contemporary culture is, but also they're really lovely.
They're really cool. Yeah, and they're lovely people.
The conversations are sort of leading to other things. So not only are we working on this exhibition, but we will actually be launching our next annual report at the V&A on the 20th of January 2026, which again I think will be quite a cultural moment for us.
It's incredible. I can't wait. I'm so excited to wear my really cool structured black outfit and pretend that I'm a boss woman in there.
We'll swank around the Raphael Gallery.
Exactly. It's amazing. I can't wait. Not only the V&A, but we've also got a project going with the Southbank Centre, which without giving too well, actually we can talk about it, can't we?
We can talk about
because I'll let you explain more about this project, because again, this is another baby of yours that you've been working on.
Yeah, I mean, this is another really exciting one. So the Southbank Centre in London will be celebrating its 75th anniversary next year. And as part of that, they want to hark back to their early days, which was that it was built for the Great Exhibition, which was supposed to sort of be for everyone to come and visit and everyone to think about who they were and what culture meant. And so for the Southbank Centre 75th anniversary, they're really keen to do some work outside London, because although they are a London institution on the south bank of the River Thames, that's why they're called the Southbank Centre, they're keen to show that they care about more than just London, and they are a venue that creates projects for the UK. So they approached us about doing a project in 6 locations across the UK in grassroots music venues, because they're also very respectful of the sort of development of artists from small venues, small regional venues particularly, who might one day play in the Southbank Centre. And they came up with a concept which has now developed into a project called Hometown Meltdown, which will be an offshoot of their iconic summer festival Meltdown, and will be related in the way that it will have 6 curators who've not yet been appointed and announced, but we're working on lots of concepts. And those curators will work with us and the Southbank Centre team to come up with events in 6 grassroots music venues around the UK that celebrate the music in that area. And there'll be a resonance between the curators that are chosen and the area that they work in. So not necessarily where they come from, but maybe a place that they have a real passion for and they'd like to see highlighted on the music map. So yeah, it's early days, but as I say, it's part of a programme that's announced this September, and it will actually take place next summer.
So exciting. V&A and Southbank Centre. That's just incredible. I really look forward to those projects happening. And lastly, I just wanted to speak to you about MBT's biggest annual event, because you've been producing Venues Day now for a decade.
I have.
Right? So I would like to know how it's changed, how it's grown, and why you think it's so vital to our network.
So the first big thing that Music Venue Trust decided to do after we'd created the organisation was we realised that we needed buy-in from venues. So we decided that the way to find out if we had that would be to invite everybody we knew from around the UK who ran a grassroots music venue to gather and spend a day talking. And the big important part of that talk was, one, do you think you need a representative organisation? Thankfully, they said yes. And then even more thankfully, when we said, do you want it to be us? They all went, hell yes. So Venues Day was really pivotal in the development of Music Venue Trust, in that it gave us the mandate to do the actions that we thought venues would want. But of course, we couldn't advance very far unless we really knew that they did want that. So it was off the back of the first Venues Day that the Music Venues Alliance was formed. And in then the ongoing discussions with the representatives of venues around the country, they absolutely wanted to continue to gather. So Venues Day became the mechanism for doing that. It's a once-a-year event where we try and bring as many people from across the country who work in grassroots music venues, who run grassroots music venues, together to largely to recognise that they are not alone, to feel supported, to know that their people exist. Because a lot of the time people run venues in relative isolation, just within their own community.
Yeah.
If you're in a city, you probably have a little network with, other venues. Manchester's got a great social going on regularly for people in the music industry to get together. But obviously most places are not Manchester.
I mean, a lot of places only have one music venue, don't they?
And exactly. And they don't often get to talk to the venues around because they're so busy doing what they do. So Venues Day is, above all, a networking event. It's the chance to bring people together, to feel that solidarity, to know that other people care and understand what they're going through, and then also to find out about opportunities. We always have exhibitors there. We always tell them about new projects, potential funding things. They always like to have a drink together. It kind of does many things. And we did 2014 to 19. We didn't do one in 2020. 21 was a real moment to bring people back together. October 21 was the first sort of event that most people had been to. Mm. And then it's kind of grew again over the next few years. And then we hit 2024 and went, one, this event is massive. And two, it's kind of become at the wrong time of the year.
Definitely.
Because October is so packed now that even though it had been in October for a few years, people were struggling to come to it. It's a big touring
month, isn't it, for bands?
Absolutely. So they need to be in their own venues. Mm. So we've paused it in 2025, which is why we've gone around the country so much. But we're bringing it back in 2026 with a really strong emphasis back on it's the national networking event for grassroots music venues. It's not a conference. And it is very much about what do the venues need to get out of the day. So it may be slightly smaller than the last one because growth is not always good. My personal thing is I like better, not bigger. And taking a pause is to make sure that when we come back with the next edition, it's better. It's what venues need in 2026 rather than being a rerun of what we've done before.
And how many people normally come to, is it 400 came to the last Venues Day?
Oh no, the last Venues Day we had about 700 delegates.
Oh, blimey.
It was huge. I'm working on a 400 to 500 for this one, partly because the networking has moved out of it into its own day. So that means that a sort of a slice of what we needed to do sits somewhere else now. So that gives us a bit more leeway for refocus. But yeah, if it's a good day, it should have 400 to 500 people, and the vast majority of people in the room will run or work at a grassroots music venue.
Amazing. Bev, thank you so much for joining me today. And before we wrap up, if you could just sum up, why should people care about grassroots venues right now more than ever?
I think a lot of people are starting to realise that you need to really value what's near to you and what speaks to your community. And grassroots music venues do that in a really incredible way. absolutely not dissing large scale entertainment if that's your thing, but saving up and planning to go to a big event is not the same as being able to walk, bus or cycle to something in your local area and take a chance on a night out where you'll probably meet lots of like-minded people. So we often talk about the hubs of developing artists and what have you, but on a community and a social level, grassroots music venues, I think, are starting to be recognised now for that element as well as the whole artist development and cultural side of things.
Yep, that sounds like the perfect note to end on. Thank you so much. This has been the Last Safe Space. Thank you so much for listening. Please like and subscribe, share the video. The audio is also available. But most importantly, support your local music scene and let's keep the lights on.